And like you have the issue with the script being leaked in Scream 2, and it's oh shit. Well, now we have everything revealed, and also the thing that got revealed is that we're doing the same thing again, where it's, you know, the love interest, this younger man is responsible, and we have to completely subvert expectations. I like the fact that in this movie, it's okay. I know we used cotton in the first one. Mm-hmm. I know we used cotton in the second one, right from the jump. No, can't be cotton because he's fucking dead.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those deaths that, like, well, you know, we've mentioned the fact that Stu Macher is the constant comeback, bring Matt Lillard back into the franchise. It's just a TV. Maybe he faked his death, but like you can't fake the way that Ghostface kills Cotton.
Absolutely.
No.
You see it on camera.
Yeah.
The opening.
Well, he's bludgeoned by the female, is like love interest.
Yeah, she hits him with like a golf club because she thinks
I remember
that
it being like a lamp, but it's like a pole.
Killer. But she hits him because she believes that he is like doing this to her, that he is either playing a game or that he is trying to kill her.
Because in all of the screamness of it, it is she like us is like, well, is it him? And then immediately he's getting called. And it's like, oh shit, no, it's not him. So then we are like the opening of Scream 2. Now we are Jada Pinkett Smith screaming at Chris Rock for getting slapped by her husband. But then also we're her character screaming at the TV going, no, it's not him.
Yeah.
We know it's not him.
We are aware of that in this because... And it's this genius play by them. I don't believe he was originally supposed to be the person in the first scene. They were going to have some other
probably a
big
celebrity,
celebrity cameo, but it becomes even more meta because that's what this franchise is. Because like his opening line of dialogue is him like complaining to his agent, saying like, I'm stuck in traffic. I can't believe like I'm having to do this. I'm doing a cameo in a cheap slasher flick,
Yeah.
like you know, in the opening sequence, and like that's what he's exactly doing.
It is. This is, I think, where Scream has distilled its essence into something definable. It's the opening of Scream 3 is, and you and I have both. This is the first movie that we'll discuss on this show, but it's also the first movie that we're discussing in this franchise that starts to fall flat.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I find that ironic because this opening sequence of his line delivery, him being the celebrity cameo after him being an actual part of the plot, a big part of the plot in the last movie.
Yeah.
And it's immediately, oh no, we're just going to fucking kill this guy. We're going to brutally murder him.
We're right back to if we can kill off somebody who is a surviving cast member from the last movie this early on, who is safe.
And Patrick Warburton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That comes a little later. He's got his little moment.
But it's funny because if you took Liev Schreiber and Patrick Warburton and flipped them, Patrick Warburton would have been the celebrity dying in the beginning. But immediately, Band-Aid torn off. It's like, well, no, let's kill the guy that everyone has suspected for the last two movies because, hey, fuck you, it's the third one. Time of day that you are watching or listening, because this is an audio podcast, to the Third Channel Podcast,
where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan
and a newbie to the genre. That newbie is named PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And today the only thing we're going to talk about, like we talk about every week, is horror. I'm conflicted with Scream 3.
I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, it's not a unique opinion, but the unique situation that I find myself in is that we are now, doing this show. We're a few episodes at this point, and the thing is that Scream 1, the episode 0 is just talking about us, which everyone loves talking about themselves to an extent. Episode 1, one of my favorite movies of all time. a really important movie to me emotionally, and a important what the foundational reason we do this show. Lot to talk about.
An immediate classic.
Right. Scream 2, follow up to that, a movie I love. I love everything about it, even its imperfections. And now we finally, you and I, have to tackle discussing a movie that neither of us love. There are bad movies.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that Scream 3 is a bad movie. I would say that
it's the weakest of these three so far.
Yes.
And in my personal opinion, the weakest of the bunch.
And you and I will disagree on that because next week we have to rip, my ears off and talk about my least favorite.
Yeah.
Because I don't like Scream 4 at all.
And that's one that I absolutely love.
Which is great. And that's the kind of, waterwork of two friends who have different opinions that you can expect moving forward. I have to pitch us every time.
Yeah.
Ty, what are your thoughts on Scream 3?
Haven't seen it.
Okay. Now, importantly, last week when we discussed Scream 2, we had showed you some of it. Have we shown you any of this movie?
No.
Okay.
I guess you didn't give a fuck, so.
I guess not, honestly.
I care about you, but you are correct. I don't care how much of Scream 3 you've seen.
All right, nice. Well, I guess we're in a good spot.
Yeah, great. That is the funniest part of this show. It is one of the funniest things when Derek had said, hey, we should bring I have this friend. His name's Ty. He's super talented and a very good producer. We should bring him in. And I have been told stories about him for a very long time because y'all have known each other for a while. And I met Ty through this show. And it is so funny to me because I go, does he like horror? And you were like, well, he likes...
He likes The Lighthouse.
Yeah. He likes
one
The
of
Lighthouse.
his favorite films of all time.
He likes The Lighthouse, and he likes Nope is one that you really...
Well, yeah, because we had a whole, we've done... Ty has produced other podcasts. He's, been the co-host of other podcasts out there, and I've guested on some of his shows. And so we've spoken about several movies, but Nope being probably our best discussion, I think.
I would agree. If for no other reason, that's the one that I've had the most feedback on. Like people have actually, people I know and a couple people I don't know have said, I really appreciated the movie after listening to that conversation, and I just appreciated listening to you guys.
Which is really cool to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
I'll
if
say,
only my inclusion produces the same result, we'll have to find out.
Yeah, hopefully.
And I'll say this: I wouldn't call myself a horror fan, especially not the way that you two are, especially Derek being the man who was born in
The Schmoobie. He's the Schmoobie.
The Schmoobie.
Yeah.
But I am a film fan. That's the thing that I love, and so. More than anything, I love the art, and so I'm down for any type of film discussion. Granted, this is a genre that I know the least about, or maybe not the least, but this is definitely not my wheelhouse per se.
Right.
But I'm excited to be on board and watch you and listen to you guys talk about shit I haven't seen.
And hopefully it's something that, and this is kind of what I hope for the audience as well, is I'm sure a lot of people who are listening are going to be fans of the genre, fans of the movies that we're talking about week to week.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's going to be people out there who it's well, I don't really watch this stuff, but I like to listen to people talk about it, especially if I know them or if I don't know them or if I think they're funny or they're interesting or whatever. And maybe they learn something from it.
And I will say, because this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll go back to producer seat. But the thing that I used to do as a kid was I used to read the synopses of horror movies because I'd be too scared to watch it myself. So I'd be like, I don't think I can handle it. But I'll read it because I liked reading. I'd read a lot of books. But so I felt like I still got the
You'd go to the
experience.
Wikipedia page and read down the
I would go to
summary, or?
IMDb. And I would just literally read, I would
very
know what
brief.
happened in the movie. I would read spoilers. I'd basically read the script. I mean, not the script, but, I'd read the plot. I'd read the plot start to finish. And so I would know what happened. I'd be like, oh, fuck, that was crazy. But I wouldn't have seen it myself.
That looked wild.
I also love that because it's the same experience as reading a book, reading a novel and getting the end and be like, that's a wild ride. But it was written by some nobody on Wikipedia. Yeah. So, or IMDb. It's just the very basic. And it's whew, that's good.
That's how I Hereditary. Because I didn't see that until I think 2020. So when that came out, was that 2018? No, that couldn't have been then. Anyway.
2017, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. But I think Hereditary was one of the last ones that I that I read, because everyone, if you've heard about Hereditary, you know how like, oh, this is the scariest fucking movie ever. And don't get me wrong,
Elevated horror, and we'll get back to that phrase talking about this franchise. But yeah,
True.
But I remember reading that one, and there's a lot of wild shit that happens in that movie. But reading that synopsis is like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on? And then you watch it, and it's like, okay, never mind.
It is as crazy as I read.
Yeah.
I will be honest, I relate to that and it's Derek's least favorite thing that I do. And we don't talk about it, but he knows, I know that he knows that I do it, which is sometimes, because I am relatively new last 4 or 5 years to this genre, sometimes the anxiety of watching these movies gets to me really bad. Like really bad. And I totally will. In the middle of watching the movie, I'll look up the plot really quick to see who dies because I can't handle it. I can't handle the surprise.
That's insane.
Yeah, we will
that's
be on
wild.
the couch together, and I will see him disappear on his phone for a bit, and then he comes back up. And it is like there's a change in his demeanor of like I can calm down.
Oh, dude, that's like my mom. Like, sorry, not for this podcast is, but my mom does the same shit. Like, she's the type of person that would read the last page of a book that she's really enjoying, so she knows like the last like page, last
Do they
chapter,
end up together or something?
Something like that. And then she'll go back and finish it. I'm like, what the fuck? You know what's happening.
Sometimes it takes the anxiety out of the situation to know who survives. Now, what I will say is I can still enjoy the reveals. Some of the best reveals I never saw coming, and I admit that. But also some of the best reveals I knew about because, I watched Game of Thrones 3 years late. So watching Game of Thrones late, you experience Game of Thrones knowing what happens.
Right. Any good reveal can exist, is still good even if you know what happens, because the reveal isn't, the goodness of the reveal isn't like the information that you get, it's the way that it's executed.
The performance, the music swelling.
The way that the information is delivered to you in that final moment.
So, the weight of it,
Yeah. But I will say, I feel like this is a horror podcast. Is the anxiety not part of it? Like
part of the fun?
I thought that was like...
And it was for a long time. And then it was every day for a year.
Yeah.
I was watching some new horrific thing. And it was just like, I don't think I can... if it were like once a week, maybe. Once a day.
Yeah,
it was like,
that's a lot.
Man.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. I don't
Which
think I
of
can
these
do that.
poor teenagers in The Hills Have Eyes gets murdered next? And it's just like, I need to know. Going back to the very beginning of me talking about the original inclusion of Ty in the podcast as the producer is that you say, he doesn't watch these movies.
Right.
And it was the hilarity that ensued of knowing that the exact conversation of, Ty, did you see this movie? No, I haven't. Okay, cool. Moving on. That is I love it so much. It's so compelling. And then hopefully one day you'll watch an 80th of the movies that we talk about on this show.
Eventually. One day I'll get around to Scream.
Yeah. Great.
That's
the
a good
first
one.
We'll hold you to it.
Yeah. One day I'll watch it.
Would recommend.
I promise I'll sit down and I'll be like, guys, I saw Scream.
For table setting, Derek, please, let's set this table for the meal that is Scream 3.
Yeah. On this point in our journey, we've reached Scream 3. Mm-hmm. It was released in February of 2000. The original release date was in December of 1999, and they pushed it a couple months. Still directed by Wes Craven, not written by Kevin Williamson.
Which makes you wonder if Williamson's treatment that he pitched this to Miramax with is what this movie is.
So, no, from what I understand. So, Kevin Williamson was busy. He was approached to write Scream 3, obviously. This is a couple years after. They didn't immediately run into this one like they did Scream to Scream 2. There was a couple years. And then they approached Williamson. They were like, write Scream 3. But he was busy writing and directing his original script, which is a movie called Teaching Mrs. Tingle. It's like oh
my God, we mentioned that last week. It was the Vincent Price movie, The Tingler. And he would turn around and he would be like, The Tingler.
Not the same thing. I don't know what it is. I think it's like maybe a romantic script or a coming-of-age tale or something. I think it has to do with like a teacher of some kind. Doesn't matter. He was also working on developing the TV series Wasteland, which I've never heard of. It ran for one season, 13 episodes. But then he also had scheduling issues with his show Dawson's Creek. He wrote, I think he did the screenplay for Robert Rodriguez's film The Faculty. So like, he was working on a lot of other stuff. He had also written, this was a couple years before, but he had done the script or the screenplay for I Know What You Did Last Summer. So it's
okay.
like he's been busy since Scream. Like he immediately kind of rose to fame because like Scream was the hottest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
But because of that,
it is both in itself contained a good story, and also it shows that a person can view all of the things that make what he is writing good and naturally include them. Why? It's because it feels natural. At no point in the original Scream does that feel unnatural, that they are shining a flashlight on every facet of the movie at the time that it's being presented. So, yeah, I mean, I can see why he would be, stratosphered because he's great.
but he's busy. And so they instead get a writer named Aaron Kruger. Strange, I know.
Oh my God! Did he write the whole thing with a knived glove?
I believe so. I think that's what he did. So the only things that he had done before this was a TV movie called Killers in the House and a film called Arlington Road, which has Jeff Bridges and Joan Cusack and Tim Robbins in it. It's a drama. I don't know it personally. And then he had co-wrote another movie, and then he got the Scream 3 script. Now, from what I know, Williamson had written like a treatment. He was like, here is an outline for a movie. He turned that in for Scream 3. He's like, this is the best I can do.
Yeah.
And Aaron Kruger took that and threw it out and then rewrote his own thing.
Which is funny because this movie has so much implication from the original. Like this, more than two. Probably more than the rest of the franchise.
This one reaches back to the first movie, like not in the same way that Scream 2 does, where it's referenced like...
No, this changes the reality of the first film.
Yes. Because, and I think that's what a good, trilogy capper does.
Yeah.
Is it recontextualizes things that you saw before. And so apparently Aaron Kruger writes it, but he, at some point, I guess the producers at Miramax were not happy, and I think he was kind of removed from this, and he went on to write Reindeer Games. They put him on that.
Oh, okay.
And then Wes Craven took over a lot of the writing. And this was another one because of, you had brought up the script leak for Scream 2. And so to combat this, it's like, this was another one where like scenes were being written like day of, pages were being written day of. Nobody had the actual, there were 3 different endings. They were all, different people got different versions of the script because they didn't want anything. And if anything did leak, they could always go, well, we could pick a different one, or that's not the one that we care about. Like it's all of this like secrecy just to keep this script safe.
Which is funny because this ends up being, in my opinion, like one of the weakest reveals.
Yes.
So it's like they went through so much effort to protect something that ends up to me just being like, oh, okay.
It was, I will say, I was definitely more on the same page of you of my dislike of this film the last couple times that I had watched it until recently. Like rewatching it this time, I kind of came around to Scream 3 a bit more.
Sure.
And what's funny is I think I liked Scream 2 a little less with this rewatch, and I like Scream 3 a little more. Not that they switched like, places, but just they
Because
both...
the good of Scream 2 is much better than the good, but the bad isn't as...
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so, but I was just kind of pleased. And it's, I don't know if I just dialed in more to what the things that Randy says in the movie, just do a better job.
Sure.
But budget,
Yes.
what do you think?
Okay.
Last one was, Scream 2 was 24.
And the last one
it was
netted
about,
less.
It was about 10,000 more, or 10 million more than Scream 1, but it netted just about the same box office, a little less.
So probably closer to the original budget then. Like, I would say maybe within like 5 million of the original budget.
So,
I'm going to be wrong again.
Yeah, they went up. They went from like 24, they went to $40 million budget.
Which
So
is
they
crazy because this
increased.
doesn't seem like a $40 million movie,
No.
but the first one does.
Yeah.
The first one has better locations. It has better, like, the fucking crazy crane angles in the first movie. And then this one is filmed, like, obviously on backlots and, like, in one house.
And so I don't know if it was just because they were shooting like more on location in some of those places.
Maybe.
A lot of those things they did rebuild, like they would shoot scenes and then rebuild as sets. So I don't know, but it did balloon up to 40.
Maybe actor budgets as well.
Could be, because I mean, definitely all of them are bigger names now with this one. And so, yeah, that's actually, that's
and
a good point.
we keep saying this, but especially, at this point, especially Liev Schreiber. I know that he's not in it a lot, but he's now a bigger name. And then Courtney Cox is also, every time we mention Scream and how those people's lives change, Courtney Cox is just like, if Friends didn't cement her while it was like really in the thick of it, of that show premiering, it's like as it slowed down, it only slowed down because their release schedules got tighter because they all got more popular. That show has never been not popular.
Yeah.
I know very few people who don't.
When they were making, $1 million an episode by the end of it? So it's like,
I know very few people who don't. I know few people who haven't seen Friends. I know 0 people who don't know what that is.
Right.
So,
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
So then, higher budget. What was the box office, you think? Did we go up? Did we go down?
I feel like after Scream 2, we have to have gone, God, every time I guess I'm wrong, which is part of the fun, I guess.
Yeah.
How is PJ wrong? I'm going to say up. I'm going to say we made more. I'm going to guess 200.
We dropped a little bit.
God damn it.
Went from 172 to 162.
Okay.
million.
Well, it made for 40, made 160.
Yeah.
That's still not bad.
Still made profit.
That's the thing that's why you get to fucking 12 Friday the 13th movies.
Yes.
It's the reason you have now going on 7 of these movies. They don't cost a lot of money, and everyone goes and fucking sees them.
Told you I'd make a movie someday. Huh?
Oh my God.
Well, if you're watching this tape, it means, as I feared, I did not survive these killings here at Windsor College. And that giving up my virginity to Karen Kolchak at the video store was probably not a good idea.
Karen Kolchak?
Yes, Karen Kolchak.
Creepy Karen?
Shut up. She's a sweet person, okay? We were working late, we were putting away some videos in the porno section, and, shit happens. Anyway, the reason I'm here is to help you so that my death will not be in vain. That my life's work will help save some other poor soul from getting mutilated. If this killer does come back, and he's for real, there are a few things that you gotta remember. Is this simply another sequel? Well, if it is, same rules apply. But here's the critical thing. If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply. Because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy. That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist. And it is a force to be reckoned with. Because true trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go.
And that's like what he just said. What Randy, probably the best scene in the whole movie.
Always is. Always is. Randy freaking the fuck out is
Yeah.
always the best part. This also is the best joke, I
Yes.
think, probably in the entire franchise, is Jamie Kennedy's Randy responding in the movie. That man is dead.
Yes.
And he responds because he knew that's how they would react. And that
Exactly.
is such a simple joke, and it is so fucking funny.
And it's the perfect way of bringing Randy back, a fan favorite who we lost too soon. And well, how do we get him in? Because we need somebody to be the voice of what this thing is and to give the rules. And yeah, they figure out a way. But what he says there, whenever I really pay attention to it, I think that's the reason that I have come around to Scream 3 more in especially the reveal of who the killer is and what's going on. Because it's everything that Randy just said. Just like in the other 2 movies, everything that he says comes true.
Yeah.
It comes to fruition in some way. And it's like, because whenever you first watch Scream 3, the reveal of who the killer is, and then the double reveal of, oh, it's not only this person, but that person is now Sydney's half-brother.
Born of Lance Henriksen and their mother when she was a Hollywood star.
Right. And so it's like, when you watch it the first time, it's like, this is the most bizarre twist
Yeah.
we've ever seen. It doesn't make any sense, but that's exactly what he says.
Right.
Is
They
like-
need something from the beginning to make the series valuable again.
Yes.
And it's like, but that's the thing. And he even mentions like in the full speech, he mentions like Star Wars and shit.
Yeah.
And Vader's, I am your father, but I am your brother. And also I am the one who, I like how these conversations differ, right?
Uh-huh.
We saved in Scream 1 and 2, we worked our way to the big reveal about the killers because in ways they are very interesting. it being Billy Loomis's mother in the second, it being Billy Ann Stu in the first, and how that kind of broke the ground of the whodunit in this franchise. This one is just so, to me, it's just so like, that, like I'm fine talking about it immediately.
It's a weird reveal, especially that first time. Like I said, I just have come around to it more.
Sure. And I it's not that I'm not coming around to it or that that's the part of the movie I don't like.
Yeah.
To be honest, to immediately get out of the way
I
what
still
I
think
don't.
it's the weakest of the reveals.
Yeah. To get out of the way. Well, no, I don't even think it's the weakest of the reveals. I think that comes next. But I think that it is a reveal that doesn't, it is so hingent on adding something to the franchise. And what it adds is just colossally stupid.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Like, realistically, that doesn't make any sense.
We then have to start, and it's a little problem that I have with Scream 5, which is once your reveal of who is related in those movies, you then have to go, well, wait a second. For you to have been born,
right?
What year did that happen in? And then what year are we in now?
How is Alexandria Daddario's character in Texas Chainsaw? How is she 47 years old?
Right.
Which, if you get that joke,
greatest looking 47-year-old I've ever seen.
And if you get that joke, welcome. You are loved.
Yes.
That is great. And if you don't get that joke, eventually we'll go over Texas Chainsaw and we'll explain it. But yeah, it is so funny too how the reveal is, oh, I'm not only the bad guy of this movie, I'm the worst bad guy in the whole franchise because I'm also the reason that Billy Loomis killed your mom.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm Roman Bridger. I'm the worst. I had your mom killed by convincing a teenager to go psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
I stalked her for years, all because she didn't like me, because I was the product of rape.
She didn't claim me as her son like she claimed you as her daughter.
Right.
And so I'm holding her and now you responsible.
Which, again, it's the same problem. It's the only problem I have with Mickey from 2, because Timothy Olyphant is so, and what's funny is that he's never really revisited this so far as I know from what I've seen of his career. He is now usually the calm, collected cowboy.
Yeah,
in some
for the most
capacity. Even like in The Office or places that he shows up like that. Like he's in The Good Place as himself. And the whole vibe is like, yeah, I'm handsome. And I'm I look young, but I act old and or not old, but you know what I mean? And he's so collected, but he's so psychotic. And in this movie, Roman Bridger is supposed to be that, but I don't feel that. I just feel like I'm the guy that got to play this character, and my reveal is because I was dead a few minutes ago, but now I'm not. But we've done that before. So they need to punch that up, but the way they punch it up is crazy.
Yes.
I'm your brother, Sidney, and I had our mom mated. And it's like, oh, okay.
It is a bizarre twist.
Another twist worth noting is that he is the only Ghostface in this movie.
That is correct.
Fans will argue that and be very specific about different frames and whatnot and argue that he had to have had help.
I have reason behind that.
Sure. No, I'm saying that they come from places that are good, but the explanation of the film as far as contained within itself.
Canonically, what we see on screen is he is the only killer in this film.
Which is not possible.
Correct.
Because he can't be everywhere at once.
And he can't fake his own death.
Right.
Without somebody helping him do it.
Right. Now, what I will say is that even if that's the thing, and the franchise wants to push forward as the only one we caught was,
right,
was Roman.
That I think is a lot of like headcanon for people, because I think even in the commentary they talk about like we kind of shot a lot of this and left a lot of this open to interpretation of like, well, this person could have been in on it because there was originally
this was the last one.
So yes, absolutely. This is, and watching it the other day, like rewatching it, it's like it feels like knowing that we have 3 more movies after this, like it feels like the end of something. Like they definitely were like, no, this is our swan song. We are closing out the book for these characters, this killer, this franchise, and we're going to do it the best way that we can, to where it does feel like there is some closure to a lot of it. And it does kind of feel like this nail in the coffin. And the reason I say that is at the very end of the movie. So something that we kind of touched on with our Scream 2 discussion was where you think that Sydney is going to be whenever you first pop in with her again after what happens to her in Scream 1 is you would think, you gave the example of
Laurie from H40, yeah.
Exactly, being a shut-in, being locks on all the doors. She's trained in guns. She's got all this stuff. She's not really that in Scream 2. She is that in Scream 3. She has completely separated herself from her friends, her family, society as a whole. She lives on a mountain in a not a compound, but a house that has a fence and has locks on all the doors and security systems. She has not legally changed her name, but like she works for a call center.
Yeah, she's like a crisis
center
counselor.
Yeah, and doesn't use her actual name. I don't even know if she uses the same, because you see her on a couple calls throughout the movie. I don't even know if she uses the same name from call to call to call.
No, you know what name she uses? Scary Movie.
I don't believe that's true.
She goes, "Hi, thank you for, I'm Scary Movie." Because that was the original title of Scream. And they're like, the people in the movie are like, what? She's like, Wes Craven Scream. I'm in that movie right now. I'm in the third one.
And then they're like, I think this is too meta, and they hang up.
And then the movie ends. And then the skeleton comes down through the audience. And then it's the Tingler. This is that getting a lot of play in this episode.
Right.
Because you mentioned it already.
Hopefully people listen to last week's.
Well, I would hope so. That's the prayer.
But she's living in this house with locks and everything else. And the minute that something goes wrong, like she reaches in a drawer and there's a gun.
Yeah.
Like, she is now prepared. And she double and triple checks locks and things like that through the whole movie. And then by the end of it, she's at her house. Dewey and Gail are hanging out there. Patrick Dempsey's character, Kincaid.
Mark Kincaid, yeah.
He is there.
I was going to bring up Dempsey because this is the second person in this franchise that I'm like, he's very handsome.
Yes, he is.
Because it's like my 3, and I'm going to save number 3.
Oh.
I'm going to save number 3. We'll get to number 3. And only in order of reveal.
Right.
Number 3 is actually number 1. It's the sexiest man alive.
Wow.
Yeah. It's Tom Atkins, by the way. I can't wait.
That
It's
makes
Tom
sense.
Atkins. He's
That
the sexiest man alive. But it's also Patrick Dempsey. Patrick Dempsey is so handsome and also has my name. He's so handsome.
That's true.
He's good in this too. He's very good in this.
Yes, he is phenomenal in this.
Yeah.
So he is there at the end as well with them, and they are sitting down to watch a movie. And she is like, Sydney walks her dog. She comes into the house. She closes the door. She like looks at the panel to type in her number to do the code for the security system. She doesn't bother doing it. She takes a sigh of relief. She walks away, and the door creaks open behind her. Mm-hmm. And she turns around and she looks out at just this, her yard basically. And she doesn't go over and slam the door and lock it and security and anything like that. She just, okay. And she turns and walks out of frame. And that's how the movie ends. And it's like, oh, she has closure.
Yeah.
Like we have watched an entire arc here.
And what's good about the writing in this movie is that arc is then exactly the opposite of Scream 2's.
Yes.
Which is, in Scream 2, it is, I am confident, I don't have anything to worry about, and then it's, oh, fuck, it's happening again. And it's like leaving going, overconfidence will kill you. Mm-hmm. If you are a target, even if you don't deserve to be, if you were, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If Laurie Strode leaving the hospital that night, there's no reason she should ever be like, well, I killed Michael Myers. I'm never going to worry about that. And same with Sydney. And so it is this beautiful way to end this. I just hate how we get there.
Yeah.
I don't hate. I'm not going to use language like this on this show. I like to hyperbolize. I like to be exaggerative, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to be as realistic as I can on the third channel because I think that's where my opinion needs to be the most distilled.
Yeah.
I don't hate this movie. I like this movie. I like it fine. This is one of the best franchises of this genre that we are going to talk about. So I should be privileged to be able to speak of a movie because eventually we'll get to the reads where I will say I hate this movie. But right now I don't. And some of its reveals are great. Also, we mentioned Patrick Dempsey and we mentioned, as we kind of mentioned people last week, we mentioned a cameo and how it kind of started with Wes as Freddy, as the janitor. And you kind of have these cameos. And a lot of times they're in the beginning, a lot of times whatnot. I watched this show, and I don't know if you have this in your notes. Mm-hmm. We watched this movie as a rewatch, How the Sausage is Made. We typically rewatch them because it's been a while since we watched them together originally.
I like them fresh.
Yeah, and I found a cameo that I don't know if you have in your notes.
Okay.
And it's crazy. with all the studio in towards the beginning.
I was
all the
hoping
studio,
you would know this.
Roger Corman.
Yes.
It was fucking crazy.
Yes.
That Roger Corman is in this. Because I paused it. I was like, because I was watching it on my phone, by the way. And I'm watching it on my phone and I see that face pass by. And I was like, hold the fuck. Because very recently you and I watched.
So this is very briefly in my notes of like Roger Corman is this. You know, he's a studio exec.
Yeah.
And so when we were watching, I didn't say anything, but I was wondering, I was like, probably the first time you watched Scream 3, you didn't know who Roger Corman was.
I did not know who he was, no.
Since then, we have now watched a couple Roger Corman films.
Well, not only that,
and
we watched a live event that Joe Bob Briggs put on.
For the last drive-in on Shudder.
And it's a tribute to Roger Corman. And he's very old in that.
Because he then passed away.
It's like a
earlier
week later,
Yeah, it was.
right?
It was a little after that, but it was within like a year of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many stories like that they get jumbled. But yes, no, he passed away close to after that live event. But I then know what he looks like, and they talk a lot during it.
And you hear his voice.
And you get his face mannerisms. And I was like, is that fucking Roger Corman?
Yes.
And by the way, I was here alone. And so I'm speaking to no one. That's how big of an impact now his face makes on me. As I was like, oh shit. I'm looking at my dog like, dude, that's Roger Corman. And he's looking at me like, dude, give me more bones.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Roger Corman is an American film director, a producer, he's an actor in a lot of things, but a lot of that is because of who he is in the other movies that he's like had a hand in. But a lot of really schlocky, low budget, like horror films, exploitation films or adjacent. And Roger Corman is the reach that this man has in the film industry to this day, the amount of big names in Hollywood, directors that you all know and love that had their start because of Roger Corman is insane. Francis Ford Coppola, you have Ron Howard, you have Martin Scorsese, you have Joe Dante started with him, James Cameron started with him with Piranha 2. Just the amount of people who Roger Corman gave a chance to direct for the first time or to write for the first time or to act for the first time or whatever it was, and they have all gone on to do such great things, and he is the reason why.
Oh my God, I just realized something. Because you are right. Roger Corman gives Cameron the first director's chair for Piranha 2, and Lance Henriksen is in this movie. And I always tie those two people together.
Yeah.
And that's also, he works in the studio.
Yes.
He's also, it is a small world, Scream, and also reality. They're small. But horror is big, and it overlaps. Let's come together right now, all of us, over spooky movies where people we know appear in other ones, and then we're like, what? And that's what we're experiencing now. It's a crazy feeling recognizing someone that should not be in what you're watching. Seeing Roger Corman in Scream 3 is bizarre. It is, and we'll get to this in the next one, but it's seeing Anna Paquin later on. And it's like, the fuck? Because it's crazy. And this series does that so well.
This is such a minor cameo moment, and you would have to know who that person is and know who that person is.
Yeah.
It's in the first Scream movie. I don't even know if we referenced this in any of the prior episodes, but Linda Blair from The Exorcist.
Which is funny because I didn't notice that the first watch through.
Right.
Only recently, you and I watching it again, you were like, by the way, that's Linda Blair. And it was like, oh my God, it is.
Because it is the quickest little cameo. She's like one of the reporters at the school, and she runs up and like gets one question in and gets pushed away, and then that's it.
No.
You see her in the background of one prior shot before that, and that's it. Those are her two moments. And like you have people who worked on the film who have their little cameos here and there because like we've talked about. Wes has had his cameo. He had a cameo in Scream 2. He's like a doctor whenever they're in the hospital. He's just walking down the hallway.
And apparently he was only doing that because like a person that was supposed to show up wasn't. And he's like, oh, fuck it. I'll do it. Yeah.
But they, listening to the commentary there, it's like they say that most of the people like in the hospital are all just crew members.
Like a gaffer at one point and like a lighting technician. Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
That feels like bootstrap shit. That feels like, well, we're just going to make this goddamn movie.
Yeah. And then it's also for people who who know those things or who maybe, you know, they watched behind the scenes stuff and it's like, wait a second, I've seen that face before. And so, yeah, that's the reason that you put Roger Corman in something like this.
Well, and Wes Craven also, and we'll get to this movie. We need to stop saying, quote, we'll get to this movie because we will. But, you know, especially because this is a Wes Craven led movie and he wrote, you know, he has writing credits in this one. The cameo-ness of things and using those, you know, the people from the set as extras and whatnot reminds me so much of the final Nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that is more meta than this will ever be.
Yes.
That is the most meta thing that exists.
Yes.
And it's just the same
But
guy.
it's like, this is the, you know, it's the fact that he had done Scream and that, and like, that's, I don't know, he's just good at it.
He's good at it because it never feels like, because I will be honest. I think this and Final Nightmare, I think those are the only things where I'm like, I really like the commentary of this. Like, I really like what this is trying to say. Most of the time, meta shit rolls my eyes.
Right.
But this was really, it feels effortless. It feels like your brain is going like, oh shit, wait a minute. But you are only paying attention, like as you watch it, you're only paying attention to the plot because the plot is also good. Which is why this movie falls apart for me pretty quickly, because the plot is just not sufficient enough. This movie is, and you and I have talked about this, and also my Letterboxd, by the way, and we'll link Letterboxd, you know, on our socials or whatever. But my Letterboxd is PJ the Mummy, MUMMY, like the goddamn Egyptian mummy, because that is a cool movie and I like it. That's really the only reason. But that's my Letterboxd, and as in my Letterboxd, my through reviews over the years, I have a smattering of them. I don't review everything. I review things I really like, and I review things I really don't, because I feel like those are if it's good, it's good. I can only say I like the music and performances so many times. But what I will say is that in many reviews, I mentioned the worst thing a horror movie or a movie in general, but specifically horror can be, is boring. And that's where this movie has problems for me, is that the next movies I have problems with other things.
Right.
This movie to me is just like the most, oh my God, it is, because then you enter a new horror stereotype that Scream 3 is not meta tackling. It is, you wait for the next, Ghostface is here and he kills somebody.
Right.
Because they are trying to tell a story, but it just didn't resonate with me. So I am watching to see when he pops out next. Because that's what's interesting to me. And it's like, I just watched it again, and I was doing the thing where I had rose tinted glasses on, because it's like the first two are so good. There's no way. I have to have just been in a weird headspace, or it was late or whatever. And I watch it again in the middle of the day, and I'm like, no, it just didn't strike out for me.
Well, and some of that could definitely be some of the issues that they had making this movie. Not exactly to your point of like the plot, you know, not being as strong or things like that, but it's things that we've come to expect from this franchise that they then had to trim down.
Yeah.
In our last episode talking about Scream, I made a correction talking about the Columbine school shooting and how it happened in '99. So that means it happens like during the production of this movie. And so in doing so, it meant that the studio had a lot of notes of like, at some point they were like, we don't want any blood or gore in this movie at all. Yeah. And Wes Craven was like, then I will walk. You will not have me as a director on here if you can't let me do my horror thing. And so they gave into that, but it's still like they trimmed down a lot of the blood, a lot of the gore, a lot of those sorts of kills in this movie. A lot of things happen either off camera, or if they are shown on camera like a stabbing, you don't actually see like the blade go in.
Yeah.
Or it's done, you know, my last rewatch, it was just like, man, there's a lot of people who just get stabbed in the back in this movie. And it's because like they're running toward camera, stabbing back. Okay, well, their acting shows you what's happening. We don't have to show it happening.
Which is funny because this movie is really guilty of that. And in the first Scream movie, you have a backstab that I think is the best backstab in horror history, which is Dewey's. When Dewey gets stabbed in the back, he paces forward. You don't know he's been stabbed in the back. He turns and you see the knife sticking out of his spine, because backstabs are used for that reason. This is a good way to show the death on screen, but we don't have to worry about MPAA. We don't have to worry about any of the restrictions that would come with that because we didn't show it happen.
Right.
It's pantomimed at you. But his is like, you don't see that happen.
No.
But he has been stabbed in the back, and then you realize, oh God, that knife is only going into your like all of your nerves travel that path. And it's like, that is fucking terrifying.
Absolutely.
And that broke new ground. And this didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm going to keep saying the same thing.
But it's just, I'm trying to play devil's advocate for this movie that
and I want to as well.
It's fine.
Yeah. Because there are parts of this movie that I love.
Yes.
And one of the things that I love in this movie so much that you and I agree on so fucking much is Martha Meeks. Is Randy's fucking...
Yeah.
Yeah. That is so funny of, who are you? Don't you recognize her? That's Randy. It's his
Randy's sister.
Yeah, I always think cousin.
Yeah.
That's Randy's sister. Don't you? It's the
and
fucking.
It's like, we've never met this person.
Yeah, no, we don't know who this person is, and they react to it like, duh. That's Randy's sister.
It's the funniest playoff.
Yeah.
To do it that way. And it also kind of in another weird meta way plays into the thing that Randy says of like, in the third one, if this is the end of a trilogy, then new characters who we haven't seen before but are linked to your past are going to come back in this one in a different way. And it's like,
that's what just happened.
It just happened outside the room that we're in right now.
That is why we're here now, is because of the thing you just said. Proving, as always, Randy is the god of this universe, is forever the voice, which, and we'll get to why that's so funny in later movies, but having her specifically bring, basically, it's like his Futurama head in a jar. Uh-huh. It is a disembodied voice of his speaking to them, and that is the best way to have done that. I think that is probably my favorite Randy speech in the entire...
Probably.
It's like that, and then either neck and neck or right below, it's the original.
Yes. I listening to it a couple times, like leading into this episode, it's like, I love so much because not only is he getting to give his big speech and do his thing, but, and we've already talked on like somehow, he times it perfectly that he knew what responses that Dewey was going to give. And so he has responses to those responses. But he says the word like trilogy, and then it doubles up and it's like trilogy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh wait, no, because he edited this himself.
Right.
Which means he then had to go in and record himself saying that in a ghostly voice, overlay that onto the footage.
I told you I'd make a movie.
Right.
It's fantastic.
It's him finally getting to do the thing that he wants to do and the thing that like he knows more than anyone.
What's funny is that Randy is very much and this is the second time in discussing this franchise I'm going to mention Saw, but Randy is very much the John Kramer of Woodsboro in that John Kramer's whole thing is that if you can learn the human character, you can predict what they'll do and you can punish them for that.
That's true.
And Randy is the same way of like, no, I know everything that everyone will do because you're no different than the way we write movies. We write movies because of the way you people act. And then none of them let him down. They all do exactly what he thinks they're going to do because they are scared people in a scary situation. And he's the only one that knew.
Yeah.
And this time, it's funny because last week we spent time talking about the fact that in Scream 2, Randy loses his shit. And that it's funny in both movies when he gets really frustrated. He's like, why the fuck is no one listening to me? And in this one, he doesn't have the opportunity to do that. Right. But because he placed in those moments where somebody would respond about who he's having sex with at work, he still gets mad. He's like, hey, a lot of shit happens, okay? Like, leave me alone. And it's so funny. Him losing his patience on these people is the best. It's the second best part of the through lines of these movies. The best part is Dewey's an idiot. It's the best part. It's so funny to me how Dewey in the first movie tries to be a good person. And he's just a child. And he tries his hardest to be an adult and this serious cop. And you mentioned him mimicking the chief is smoking a cigarette and he's eating the ice cream cone. And they're doing it at the same time because he's just this kid. And then in the second one, he has all this bravado of like, I'm the real man. I'm going to help you, Gail. I'm going to blah, blah, blah.
I survived this last time. I'm going to come back and save you again.
And he is more confident. And that it shows that he's grown, but he's still a kid. He's still a kid in big boy pants. And he trips downstairs and he accidentally grabs Gail's boob. And then in this one, it's like, me thinking that you profited off of Stab and you sold that book and you made all this money. You're dirt. You scum. And then he's like, we go to Dewey and Dewey's on the set and it's like, yeah, I'm a consultant because I've almost been killed for this shit twice. So I'm gonna make fucking money off.
Exactly. But that's, again, we keep coming back to that with this franchise, is because we have characters that carry over to, to sequel to sequel to sequel, we can follow them. We can see growth. We can show where they are now in their career. It's like, oh, well, the cop thing didn't work out. His relationship with Gail didn't work out. Now he's doing this, and he's like kind of dating the faux version of Gail, which in the Stab 3 movie.
And by the way, something I did want to point out is last week, one of the negative comments about 2 that we both agree with is that the new characters,
Yeah.
They don't serve a lot of purpose.
Yeah.
Parker Posey in this movie, I love her already. Everything that she's in is phenomenal. She's my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah.
She is so funny. The constantly standing behind Gail and imitating her.
Mirroring whatever she's doing.
And it's always, as she's talking, she like glances over just to see and
Is this what you would
readjusting.
do?
And it's so fun. And throughout all of the deaths, and she dies, and throughout all of the deaths that are happening before she's dying, she's still trying to capture Gail Weathers.
Yeah.
And that's the funniest shit in the world to me. Not to mention, she's more reminiscent of Gail in 2 than Gail is by this point.
Right.
Because Gail, once again, has had to go through shit. She's lost a relationship. She's had a lot of struggle. And now we're in a new place with her. And so once again, she's kind of, we watched her blossom into this like fun-loving, like, no, I actually love you, dude. Like, I'm sorry. I love you. And I love all of you. And I'm sorry if I rubbed you guys wrong. To now it's once again, I'm like, oh, can you all fuck off? And it's just so funny. And seeing them all again, that is one of the positives of this movie, because that's what I want to focus on. It's one of the positives of, once again, you see these people who you've watched go through horrible circumstances and you just love them.
Yeah.
They're all wonderful.
I always want to catch up with what they're doing.
Yeah. But like Parker Posey, because her character's name is Jennifer, and Jennifer's great. And then Mark is great, which is Patrick Dempsey. And they're both new to the series. And then the performer who plays Roman is fine.
Yeah. And I think this was his, if I'm not mistaken, his like debut, like his acting debut in a movie, I believe.
He's good at like the psycho masking as normal.
Yes.
But unfortunately, like unless you are somebody like fucking Anthony Hopkins, who in every other universe would be like a dragon or like an ancient primordial monster, like the way they speak and the way they labor their sentences. And it's like James Spader is another good example. There are these people that just have this odd, ethereal. Christoph Waltz is a good example of the way they speak, the way they measure themselves. It is strange. And that plays a good psycho masking as normal. But to do that with a guy who's just kind of like, meh, it's like, he's not doing a bad job. It just doesn't do anything extra for the movie. You should have just made him a fucking crazy person. Again, the best part of Scream 1 to both of us is Stu Macher losing his fucking mind.
Absolutely losing it.
And one of my favorite parts of Scream 2 is Mickey losing his fucking mind. There's something fun about oh no, I'm just a fucking bloodthirsty maniac.
Well, and even in the end of Scream 2, I think like Mrs. Loomis also just loses it in the same way that Billy does in the first movie. Like it is you see that, I don't know, generational trauma or what have you passed down.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm in this watch especially. I was like more interested in a lot of the newer cast in this. I think a lot of the red herrings, they are setting, like they are doing everything to point the finger at everyone.
Yes.
It is like
Except Cotton.
except for Cotton.
Yes.
They get that right out of the gate. He's gone.
Goodbye.
But amazing performance in that opening scene. Liev Schreiber is incredible.
Yeah.
They're really pointing it at Dempsey's Mark Kincaid.
Yes.
Everything, because he's a movie lover. He has posters of movies in his like police office.
Is like real passionate about him too.
Real passionate about movies. Like Sydney at one point he is like, where is Sydney? I need to speak to Sydney.
Yes.
He is like just, and that's
More than Derek was in 2.
That's the other thing about this is that in the other movies, the calls start coming in from Ghostface or from whomever, and it's a game. This one, the first call that happens is one, bizarre, because it's to Cotton in the opening scene. And at first, it's a woman's voice.
Yeah. Well, because that in this one they have a new prop,
Yes.
which I love. Which people hate that
People
thing.
really don't like it.
I love it. I think it's super cool.
It's pushing that line a little bit for me, but I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you had to try something new.
Yeah.
And but it's the first time we hear a voice where you're like, and then it switches and it's Ghost and it's Roger Jackson's
which
Ghostface
is great
now.
and terrifying.
And it's like, oh God, he could now sound like anyone, apparently.
Because it's already, he can be anyone.
Yes.
But now it's, if you pick up the phone and you hear a voice and you are lulled, it's like, oops, because it could be anyone.
Still be, yeah.
Fantastic.
And so, like, that happens. And so you get that trick. He then uses Cotton's voice against Cotton's girlfriend or wife.
And then uses Sydney's mother
against Sydney
to drag her out into the open.
Yes. And it's all of these things where, I mean, it's set up very well of Patrick Dempsey is trying, but the first question, that's what I was getting at. The first question that is asked is not like, what's your favorite scary movie or some little game that we're going to play. As soon as he switches over into Ghostface, it is just, where is Sydney? I know you know, tell me, or your girlfriend dies. I am looking at her.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so this is the time. Again, we had the thought in Scream 2, but it's like, no, this is the one where it's like, no, we're going straight to Sydney this time. That is our end game.
Well, and what's funny is if you think about it, in Scream 1, they were going straight for Sydney. In Scream 2, they were going straight for Sydney, but they didn't have to accomplish a goal to do that. Roman, and especially because if you look at the movie as a whole, Roman is the only one. He's the only operator. And he has got to find her. He's got to drag her out in the open. And he has more of a personal reason than any of them so far to kill her. And because familial ties are always the best motivation. So he's got to get her dead. And I do think it is a different, it subverts our expectations again. Because Ghostface is, I play games, I am a trickster, I am, charismatic. And this is just immediately teeth grit screaming. And it's great. It's effective. It's scary. And then things happen, and then he's back and he's scary again. And that's my review of the movie is you have a lot of good pieces and their connective tissue is very weak.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I like the next step in this meta chain of we are now literally on a movie set for the production of Stab 3.
Yes.
In the movie Scream 3, where we are recasting characters from the first two Scream movies because Tori Spelling has gone on to do other things, which is a great in-joke that we never mentioned in Scream 2. In Scream 1, they're like, hey, Sydney, if they make a movie out of your life, who do you think's going to play you? And she's like, oh, I bet it'll be somebody like Tori Spelling. Well, then Tori Spelling is a good enough, can poke fun at herself enough to then play Sydney in Stab, the movie within the movie of Scream 2. Hilarious. And then they're recasting for this one. But in doing so, you're on a movie set that is a one-to-one recreation of Sydney's childhood home and her neighborhood.
Right.
And then we get a repeat of Sydney in her house because she's just kind of dreamily there of just kind of, I assume going over the events in her life of just like, wow, how have we come to this? And I'm back in this thing again.
Yeah.
And then we have Ghostface pops out of the hallway closet behind her in a mirrored shot from the first movie. She hits him with a potted plant. She runs up the stairs. All the same things happen, except she goes out the window this time. She's like, no, I know where this goes, so I'm going to get out. I'm going to actually do this. Now, this is where there only being one killer falls apart horribly because there's no way that he can physically, she drops him down a story at some point and he lands on a bed because they only build the facade of this room but not the full floor. And then whenever she turns around and goes into the next bedroom, he's there as well. And it's like, well, no, there's not enough time for that to have happened. But that's because in the script initially there were going to be two killers.
Now, is it possible that Roman Bridger, Sydney's half-brother, was at one point bit on the hand by a radioactive spider and as a result gained the powers of that spider? And so she pushes him down, but he webs the ceiling and goes over and past her into the bedroom that she's about to enter. Is that possible?
I mean, I guess.
Sam Raimi does horror as well at some point in his career, so maybe
That's
that's
where he
like a
started.
Roger Corman thing, and it's all connected.
Yeah.
No, the reality is it has to be that.
Yes.
It has to be eventually, the decisions were made to cut it to one.
And then the only thing that kind of quote unquote saves that is, again, Randy's speech of the rules of like, the killer is now superhuman.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. But this is a franchise that is so based
On
in
reality. Yeah. The other thing that I
becomes a
consider
stretch.
is that they knew this was the end. At the time,
They
they
assumed
know
at the
it's
time
the
it
end.
was the end.
Right. They're writing and producing as though it is. But even if you know that, like this is the last one, you have to think, well, we've been successful. They've greenlit 3 movies. Maybe later on they'll want to make another one. So what you do is you create in the script as your final product. You're like, okay, well, no, we're going to use the one. That's where we ended up. But we'll make it obvious in certain ways that it couldn't have just been the one guy, so that in 4, we take the thread of, well, who was the other one? And you can show those scenes again.
Right.
But I'd like to think that that's what they did. But the reality is it probably changed too much, because this is the one that starts to suffer from studio.
Yes.
This is the movie that starts to suffer from everyone grabbing it and yanking it in different directions.
That's true.
And it feels like that. It's the first time watching this franchise that I felt like that, like studio bloat of like, a lot of people started to poke their heads into this. A lot of people said, well, we're paying for this kind of thing. Or, oh, well, we don't need this because this studio doesn't want to reflect that. And it's like, I mean, if this is a movie where, because Scream 1, Wes is brought on and he directs it and it becomes ubiquitous with Wes Craven. I love this thing. I have made a bunch of fucking movies. It's John Carpenter hates Halloween, right? He hates Michael Myers because everyone's like, John, what's a new? And he's like, fucking leave me alone about it.
That was a thing I did, and now I'm done with it.
I have also done a million other things.
Yeah.
Please stop talking to me about. The only thing that John Carpenter will take questions on is how cool was Rowdy Roddy Piper?
Yeah.
And the answer, pretty cool. But Wes loves Ghostface. He loves Scream. He loves Nightmare. He loves the things that he makes. And so for him to go, no, if you keep fucking putting your hands in this, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, that's bad.
Yeah, and it's one of the only franchises that you can say that the original director, up until he passed away, like he did he always came back. He always did the thing.
You have so much love from the creation standpoint of this movie that is sad to see. It is sad to see that somebody who puts so much effort and energy into these things start to get kind of stripped. Because I don't believe that the negatives of this movie are because of the cast. I don't believe it's because of the writing, really.
The writing is probably its weakest point.
I think
that's where it starts falling apart.
I think the things that are problematic with the writing weren't because of the writer. It was because of directions they were being then given. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it could be. I just think it's an unfortunate thing that Williamson was so busy that he could not come back. And that they got a writer who hadn't done a whole lot. Not to say that Williamson had, but he just had a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And a vision and stuck with it and could work with Wes and do their thing. Him being taken away from that, it's like you get stuck with a writer who doesn't have as much experience and who also apparently had not seen either of the first 2 Scream movies before starting work on this. He got the job because he got the job.
Sure.
And there's some comments of that in references to that from like Roman in this movie where he's at some point he's complaining to other people on the production of like, well, they're making me do this cheap horror film because I had to agree to do that before they'll let me do my classic love story. And that is based directly on Wes Craven having to agree to do Scream 3 before they would let him direct his musical drama that he wanted to do called Music of the Heart, which had Meryl Streep and Cloris Leachman in it. Like, Wes Craven directed a movie with Meryl Streep in it between Scream 2 and Scream 3.
Yeah.
But he had to agree to do Scream 3 because they were like, well, no, you're the horror guy. That's what you do. And he's like, but I have other things that I want to do. I want to make other movies. Please let me do that. And they were like, okay, we'll let you have it, but you got to give us one more.
And also,
a lot of directors get stuck in a genre if they do. It's George A. Romero is a lot of the same things that Wes had. Same thing with Tobe Hooper. They had huge success over a horror film earlier in their career, and then that's where they got stuck. Even though they were like, I also have other ideas. I want to do these other things. That's where like Carpenter, he kind of does his own thing, and he's all over the map genre-wise.
He is all over the map genre-wise, but the thing that bothers me about Carpenter's career in juxtaposition to, Wes Craven's career is that Carpenter was greenlit to do all this stuff, and he made all these things, like the fucking Chevy Chase Invisible Man movie,
Right.
or what is it, Starman, and all of these amazing movies with amazing actors, amazing performers, and the only ones that people ever cite, Thing, They Live, and Halloween, because those are the spookiest ones.
Yep.
And that's a shame.
Christine.
Yeah.
But another horror film.
Yeah. And the thing that bothers me the most about it is you have these directors like Wes Craven, like John Carpenter, but let's focus on Wes because this is his penultimate movie. This is the finale of a trilogy that was very important to him. It's sad because Wes Craven is not a horror director. Wes Craven just happens to be very talented, but there is a mindset, and that's going away. I believe it's going away now, but there just seems to be this mindset of like, well, horror isn't art. That's not a movie.
Right.
It's cheap. It's easy. You Friday the 13th, some nonsense onto the screen and you'll make money. So you're not as serious. It's what I think a lot of people now think about like comic book movies.
Right.
Well, that's easy. You're just making a comic book movie. But like some directors that have worked on comic book movies are amazing. Sam Raimi's a great example because Raimi has made some of the best horror movies of all time and also some of the best superhero movies of all time and has also worked on other stuff. And it's just, it is sad to see directors get pigeonholed. James Whale, Wes Craven, John Carpenter, all of these people, because some of the most exciting art I've ever seen, some of the strangest stretches into places, even if I don't like it. Like a good example of a movie that I think stretches a lot is Poltergeist, because Tobe Hooper tried stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't really like that movie. And yeah, it's kind of horror.
Yeah.
But he tried weird stuff in that movie. Yeah. And I'm just, they're the ones that will always take the chances. And it sucks that they take these chances on these horror franchises. That's why they work.
Yes.
And then they're either ripped out of their hands by a studio who goes, no, it's only Freddy. No, it's only Michael.
And now we can print money with it.
Right. And then they're terrible.
Yeah.
With the exceptions here and there.
Yeah, they run themselves dry eventually. Because it's the horror franchise, especially during, the era of the 80s, let's say, where the slashers like really picked up and did their thing, is like you had a huge hit with the first one. We rush immediately into the next one. Oh, did that make as much money? Immediately into the next, until we start to see the drop off. Once we hit a drop off, then it's like, okay, the franchise is dead.
Until fans go,
Hey, I love this thing. Can we bring it back?
It's funny because a lot of time, I used to work at a Hot Topic for the audience. I used to work at a Hot Topic. And what would happen, what we'd notice is that a lot of times you would have like, this isn't a real example, but let's use Halloween. You'd have, Hot Topic suddenly gets a Michael Myers shirt around the Halloween time and we put it on the shelf. And then that sells out really quick. And they're like, oh, and then they send more. Different kinds of Halloween shirts. Hot Topic orders more Halloween shirts. We put more Halloween shirts on the shelves. They sell out. Then it's like a year or two later, you get a rumbling of, hey, by the way, they're making a new Halloween because the fans go, oh shit, I love that, and they buy stuff, and those marketing companies send that feedback off. Yeah. I believe that has to be part of how it works.
Yeah.
I think the only other negative I have with this movie, as far as like story. Lance Henriksen is great, and I love him, and his performance is good in this. But the story beat of this is my real dad, I don't care for that. I think it's too many cooks.
It also, that part of the storyline especially, there's several references in this where we're talking about movie execs, and especially we're talking about Sydney's mother was like an actress. She did a couple like early cheap horror films, but then it's revealed that like she was sleeping with, the only reason she got the job is because she was sleeping with the executive. And then it's revealed that the actress who is playing Sydney in Stab 3, who is played by Emily Mortimer. The character's name is Angelina.
Yeah.
She, it's revealed at the very end because they were like, oh, well, how did you get, you're a know-nothing actress. How did you get this part in the biggest part in the biggest movie, ever? And, she had won a contest or whatever and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, she's like, I can't believe I slept with the, director to get this role or whatever. It's brought up several times throughout this movie in particular.
Yeah.
About those things going on in Hollywood. And I don't know how much we want to go in this. We don't need to, but I'm just bringing it up because it is a thing that people point out. This is a Miramax film.
Oh, yeah.
The producers on this movie are Bob and Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't made that connection.
It is a like.
Oh, yeah. Real life spoiler alert. If somehow you aren't aware, Bob and Harvey Weinstein, specifically Harvey, garbage monsters. Just terrible people, terrible human beings.
So yeah, it's this weird thing that this franchise kind of continues to reiterate of like life imitating art, imitating life,
The studio imitating the genre, imitating art, imitating life. Yeah, it's all connected.
Does one influence the other, or does one change what happens in the other because of, it's this weird thing, and it's weird that they being the Weinsteins and Miramax as a whole would let those things be in the movie at the time that presumably all of these terrible things that they're doing are happening.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that if you look at
Allegedly.
jokes, no, I think we can say it happened.
I think we can say it happened.
Yeah, he got put in jail. I think all the things that you see jokes through Hollywood about that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, don't get stuck with Harvey in an office, and he laughs, and the camera cuts to him, and he's like, "Ha ha, ba ba ba," and it's like, oh no, it was not a secret.
Yeah.
But I think that Wes was like, well, no, I'm going to show that this is a fucking bad thing.
Yeah.
Or whomever made that decision to keep it in the script. I think that those production companies, if they watched it at all, I think the reason that they would keep it in is because they thought that they weren't ever going to get in any kind of trouble for it. And I'm happy that ended up not being true.
Yeah,
I am sad that Wes Craven died before we had the ability to put a brain in a robot body. I'm talking like this is the last movie he made. It's just, I just like the next one so much that it's like, this is the last one that I like enjoy watching.
Well, maybe you'll have a different opinion rewatching it. Who knows?
I hope so. That would be nice. It's funny because now we are at a place where I have seen stuff and have, that's the concept of the show.
You've seen other things in his catalog as well.
Yeah. And it's like, did I think that 2 would hold up? Did I think 3 would hold up? Typically, no. And unfortunately, the stereotype of the sequel is never as good as the original has poisoned the well of sequels in general. Yeah. I usually don't think they're going to be as good. The problem is that as I'm rewatching them, we have now reached this critical mass of I watch it the first time, form an opinion, and now I'm watching it again and forming an opinion based on my uninformed opinion. And it's like I am slowly converting myself to things I didn't like the first time.
I have found that so many times with a lot of horror films, with a lot of films in general, but horror films especially, where especially like a sequel happens and it's not what you expected it to be, or it's not exactly like the first one, and you're like, well, that's not what was that, and I hate it and it's garbage, and then years go by and you rewatch it and you go, oh, I see what they were doing.
Yeah.
This is just as genius as the first. It's just they're going in a different avenue.
I think the best example of that you and I have discussed is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
That is correct.
Because I left that movie very upset.
Yes. That is one where I've brought up my friend Nathan growing up. He's done the episode artwork for our show now.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, seriously. We are going to have him on eventually.
I hope so.
But he is like the person who introduced me to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because he could get his hands on it. We watched that. And then he also was like, you've now got to watch part 2. And I remember like watching it for the first time and just being like almost hurt.
Yeah.
Of like, what the fuck is this? Like, how could Toby do this?
Like, how is this same creative hands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like he just went such a different direction that it's like it's this black comedy, and it's not gritty and it doesn't make my skin crawl. And then a couple years go by and I watch it again and it's like, oh, this is like neck and neck with the first one. It's so drastically different. But it's Toby having fun in a completely different way.
It's also who the story is about.
Yes.
It's the first one is about something very different than the second. The second is almost completely cynical, which is fun. And these movies do cynical in a refreshingly weird way, which is all 3 of these, all 6 going on 7 of these movies so far have been pretty cynical.
Yeah.
They talk about things that are relevant now, exclusively and they lampoon them, but also write a story that is adjacent to them to show a better way to do it, in my opinion. And a lot of these movies, that's the case. And I love that. I love how cynical these movies are with, oh my God, roll my fucking eyes. The killer's going to come out of the goddamn basement. But then he does, but you honestly are like, oh shit, you got me.
And that's it, is because they're making a commentary on it, they can both use the cliches and subvert the cliches to keep it surprising.
Yeah, that's great.
You don't know which way it's going to go at any given time.
And the most surprising thing about this one is that there was only one Ghostface killer.
That is true. And if you didn't know, because I don't know if you do, the character I just mentioned a second ago,
that's the
Angelina Tyler,
is the one that everyone thinks was the second one because her kill is super obvious.
Yes.
Yeah,
she is set up like a lot of people. She is set up as a possible red herring. There's a bathroom set that's a recreation of the bathroom from Scream 1 where Sydney has her run-in with Ghostface there, where she catches Angelina and she has like a Ghostface mask and a knife or a prop or something in her purse that she drops on the floor. And Sydney's like, well, what is this? She's like, oh, I was just, the movie got canceled, so I was just taking souvenirs. I didn't think anyone would mind. But it's this and she kind of is, there's several times in the movie where like she disappears for a bit and then she comes back and people are like, well, what were you doing? And so they really set her up to be.
And it's like her body is the only body that you don't cut back to.
You see her.
She's like wide-eyed getting dragged away.
But you don't see who's doing it. You don't see anything like that. And then you don't ever see like her in a body bag or
Jennifer
something.
dies, Parker Posey's character dies, and it like cuts back.
Yeah.
Or like Roman gets shot in the fucking forehead. Like it's the Dewey line, always shoot the killer in the head.
Yeah.
Is kind of, that's, he really gets it done. And you have all of these moments where you cut from a death back eventually to that body and go, no, this one's dead. That's the only one that isn't.
Yeah. You get that, she gets dragged off, she disappears.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, because there was supposed to be a second, it was more than likely going to be her.
Yeah.
And they cut that out, and it creates this weird thing that doesn't really make sense anymore. He becomes superhuman because that's the only way that it operates.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, when given those two options, I think it's left to whomever watches it at the time.
Yeah.
I either think that it's this or I either think that it's this. Personally, it can't have been one person. But I also like to think that the movie becomes unbound because it is a movie. It doesn't really bother me. I've never really given it too much thought. What I will say is that the fourth one, I wish had been more aligned with that. Of not playing with, because spoiler, 4 goes back to 2 characters and 2 killers, and it's like it's traditional at this point. There's more 2s than there are other numbers throughout the killer lists in these movies. I think it's 4 to 2.
Yeah.
As far as 3 is concerned, I like every performance.
Yeah.
I like the new characters. I like most of the things that this movie does. I like. I just wish that it were done in the order of operations that made its connective tissue not so boring. Because that's where I'm left. I like every beat, and it's the downbeat that's just like, okay, well, we get to wait again. And that might just be burnout, honestly, because both of the times that I've seen these movies, it's, I've seen many of them up to the point where it's 3, and then this one I saw 1, but then we watched it again with commentary, and then 2 with commentary, and now 3, and it's like, maybe it's just like, okay, fucking come on, let's get this shit over with, because I want to get to 5, because I fucking love 5 so goddamn much.
Right, and it could be a little of that. Did you notice the kind of lack of Sydney in this one?
Yeah.
So she was busy with I believe it was the final season of Party of 5.
Okay.
And another movie. So she only had I don't know, 20 days that she could allot to work on this movie.
Yeah, this one is almost led by Gale.
Yes.
It's led by Gale and Dewey and Parker Posey.
And it's very much because of that reason. They had to shoot around Nev's schedule. And so it does kind of become, it raises the other characters up a bit more. And that's why we also, I think, get to know the new cast of characters a little more than we did in 2.
Yeah.
Because they had to.
It's Han and Chewie and Empire. We're going to focus on these guys a little bit. Luke has kind of taken the B story in this one. And and people argue that.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's definitive, but I think that 3,
it's a little more even.
Yeah, elevating those characters that are so beloved because of the performances and just letting the performers do whatever they want. A big old house. It's just great. Every time you see them is great. And it is seeing old friends, because this is the franchise. This is like the first horror franchise that we've watched wherein it's like the really most important part of it is the relationships between the characters. Because like even like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that are connected to each other, it's like you've got the main character and their friends, and the friends die, and then the main character's in the next one with some friends, and then those friends die, and the main character dies, and then the next one there's a new main character from that original cast, and it's just like it bounces all over the place. But Scream is like it is like watching a sitcom of your best friends.
Yeah, we catch up with them every couple of years. It's this
Except Randy.
Yeah.
Oh, Ty, can you do the womp, 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 womp? I'm going to say that again, and it's perfect. Ready? Here we go. Except Randy. Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at ThatDRosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
And Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.